Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brandon. Welcome back to Murata Media. I apologize for my extended absence. I really wanted to make some new videos, but due to everything that's happening in the world right now, I honestly just felt that it was sort of inappropriate to post. But I can't stay away forever because I love talking about movies and I find making reviews and editing them to be very therapeutic. And I think I picked a good weekend to come back because there are two movies that were released this weekend that I've been really excited to watch, and I just watched both of them, so let's talk about them. And the first movie that I watched was the newest Spike Lee joint, Da 5 Bloods. This is Spike Lee's first movie since Black Klansman, which came out in 2018, which was one of my favorite movies of that year. And Da 5 Bloods tells the story of these four Vietnam veterans who return to Vietnam in order to find the remains of their fallen squad leader along with the gold that they buried during the war. And let's start with the Bloods themselves. These guys were great. They all had such great chemistry with one another, and you can feel the camaraderie between them whenever they were in a scene all together. But easily, the star of this movie is the character of Paul, played by Delroy Lindo. This guy absolutely steals the show whenever he's on camera. His character had the most wide array of emotion shown throughout the entire movie, and you could tell the aftermath of the war had an effect on him the most. Because like most soldiers that go to war, Paul suffers from PTSD, and his PTSD is perfectly showcased in a very intense scene that involves a chicken. And this scene was honestly one of the most heart-pounding moments throughout the entire movie. His character was the most well-rounded in terms of character development, and as the movie progresses, you begin to learn more and more why this mission of finding his squad leader and the gold means so much to him. And since this is a war movie, you can definitely expect there to be some blood and gore. And the battle scenes that happen throughout are very intense and very well directed, and that intensity is brought up to its peak with a tremendous third act. Now, even though there were a lot of things to love about this movie, there were quite a few things that I didn't quite like either. Even though I really enjoyed Black Klansman, one of my biggest gripes about that movie was its really weird editing choices, and Da 5 Bloods also falls victim to that. There's a multitude of continuity errors, and a lot of them happen when characters are hugging. And the way they cut these scenes together is when two characters are hugging, they go in for the hug, and when they're in the middle of it, it'll cut to another angle and they're just about to start the hug. And then when I noticed that this happened again and again and again all throughout, I started to realize that this was definitely a purposeful choice, but I didn't quite understand why they chose it because it looked more like bad editing than anything else. And something else about the editing that I didn't quite like was it would cut away from the scene to show pictures of things. Like, for example, at the beginning of the movie, one of the Bloods is showing a picture of his son to his friends, and it cuts away and it shows the picture that he's showing against a black screen. And it does this rather than showing a close-up of the picture in the character's hand. And it's not just times like this, too. There may be scenes when characters are just talking about something, and then it'll cut away and show what they're talking about against a black screen. It was just so jarring, but after seeing the same editing choices made in this and in Black Klansman, I guess this is more just of a Spike Lee thing. And I really can't fault him for that because, I mean, it's his movie, and if this is his vision, then he absolutely fulfilled it. But the editing was not all terrible because there are quite a few transitions between the past and present that I thought were really smooth. And I love the choice of changing the aspect ratio between modern day and the war. And something else that bothered me during the war scenes is the actors who play the Bloods in the modern day are played by the same actors when it cuts back to the war. And their squad leader is played by Chadwick Boseman, who surprisingly is 42 years old. I thought he was way younger than that. And so you have this 42-year-old man leading this squad of 60-something-year-old men, and they look exactly the same from that time to today. So did they not age or gain or lose any weight in over 40 years? And there's this plot point of one of the characters who finds out that he has a daughter that he didn't know about, and it didn't really go anywhere. And the last thing about this movie that bothered me was its runtime. This movie is 2.5 hours long, and I really don't think it needed to be that long. There were definitely some scenes that they could have shortened or just cut out entirely, but all that being said, Da 5 Bloods was a very enjoyable movie. It gives us a perspective of the Vietnam War that we haven't really seen in a movie before, and the overall story of just coming to grips with your past and needing closure is something that I think we can definitely all relate to. It has its flaws, but I was thoroughly entertained throughout, and overall, I would give Da 5 Bloods a 7 out of 10. And the other movie that I just watched was Judd Apatow's The King of Staten Island. This is Judd Apatow's first movie since Trainwreck in 2015, which was okay. And The King of Staten Island is about a man named Scott, played by Pete Davidson, who's still coming to grips with the death of his father, who died when he was very young. And his death has led Scott to be so unsure of himself and what he wants to do with his life. As I mentioned, Pete Davidson is the star of this movie, and surprisingly, he was really good. I'm not really a fan of his. I find him kind of annoying on SNL. Granted, he may be doing really well just because his character is a fictionalized version of himself, but I found his character to be very relatable. He has these basket-case friends who don't really do anything to uplift him or motivate him to fulfill his dreams. His sister has gone away to college to fulfill her dreams, and Scott has dreams of his own of being a tattoo artist, but he just can't fulfill them because he's not very good at it. And it's not just Pete Davidson who's great in this movie. Everybody is pretty fantastic in my opinion, but Bill Burr, wow, he was excellent. He's one of my favorite comedians, and I think he's absolutely hilarious, but I just love seeing funny guys break away from comedy in order to truly show their acting chops in roles like this. And speaking of funny, The King of Staten Island definitely has its fair share of funny moments, but I wouldn't categorize this movie as a comedy. It definitely has a much heavier emphasis on drama, and Judd Apatow really shows that he's great at directing this genre. I also really enjoyed the movie's soundtrack. There's songs by Kid Cudi, Fabulous, even a really pretty rendition of Scar Tissue by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. There were definitely some things here that bothered me, like the cinematography just seemed very uninspired. I mean, the shots aren't anything horrible, they get the job done, but they could have done a bit more, I think. And it's very funny to me that the DP of this movie was also the DP for There Will Be Blood, which he won an Oscar for. There's also a plot point that involves Scott getting a job at a restaurant, and I realized by the end of the movie that he hadn't worked at the restaurant for a while, and so I thought, did he quit? Did he get fired? Because it's never explained if he works there anymore. And just like Da 5 Bloods, I also thought that this movie was way too long. Most of Judd Apatow's movies are much longer than they need to be, but did this movie really need to be almost 2.5 hours? I mean, I can definitely understand why people would say Da 5 Bloods was as long as it was for a reason, but The King of Staten Island, it could have been an hour and a half. But overall, The King of Staten Island was also a really good movie, and I'm surprised how much I enjoyed it. Great performances by all, especially from Pete Davidson and Bill Burr. Judd Apatow really shows off his directing chops in this one, and the story is something that I think everyone can relate to. And it must have been so cathartic for Pete Davidson to make this movie because his dad in reality was actually a firefighter who died in 9/11. You could tell that the story was very personal to him, and it really paid off in the end. And overall, I'd give The King of Staten Island an 8 out of 10. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of Da 5 Bloods and The King of Staten Island. If you guys watched either of these movies or both of them, let me know what you thought about them. Did you like them? Did you not like them? And which one did you like better? If you guys like this review, then be sure to hit that thumbs up. And I do have another video planned for next weekend, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when I post it. If you want to see my past reviews, I will link those right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day. Please stay safe out there, everyone. And I will see you all next time.